Hey everybody, this is Erin, and I've got a question for you. What have you learned from writing excuses that you use in your own writing? Now, we talk a lot about tools, not rules, which means there are things that we're going to say that you're going to be like, yes, that is for me. That's the tool I'm going to use in my next project. And there are others that you're going to be like, I'm going to leave that to the side. And what we want to know is which of the things that we're saying have really worked for you? What's the acronym you're always repeating? What's the plot structure you keep coming back to? What's a piece of advice that has carried you forward when you've been stuck in your work or that you've been able to pass on to another writer who's needed advice or help? However, you've used something that you've learned from us, we want to know about it and we want to share it with the broader community. Every month, we're going to put one of your tips or tricks or tools in the newsletter so that the rest of the community can hear how have you actually taken something that we've talked about and made it work for you. And I'm personally just really excited to learn about these because a lot of times y'all take the things that we say and use them in such ingenious and interesting ways to do such amazing writing that I'm just like chomping at the bit to get in these tools and tips and share them with everybody else. So if you're interested, please go to our show notes and fill out the form there and be part of this project and just share with us what you're doing, what you've learned, and how you're using it so that we can share with everybody else. Really excited again to get all this in because honestly, what we say is made real and important and meaningful by what y'all do with it. With that, you are out of excuses. Now go tell us what works for you.
Besides recording writing excuses, I am kind of always trying to level up my game. So I went on masterclass and I took this class by David Sedaris about storytelling and humor. It was really thought-provoking. Like Howard and I talk about humor all the time on the podcast, but the way David approaches it is so different and also has so many overlaps. He talks about finding your way into a story, how to end with weight, which was a really interesting thing to think about. Anyway, with Masterclass, they have thousands of bite-sized lessons across 13 categories that can fit into even the busiest of schedules. So if you're a writing excuses listener and you like that 15 minutes long situation, Masterclass has that. They have plans starting at $10 a month, billed annually, and you get unlimited access to over 200 classes taught by the world's best business leaders, writers, hello friends, chefs, and like a ton of other things. So with Masterclass, you can learn from the best to become your best. That sounds hokey, but honestly, I really enjoy taking classes through there. It is one of those places where you get access, and it has this very intimate quality to it. With the David Sedaris class in particular, I was trying to figure out how to work some humor into a short story that was around some stuff with my mom, honestly. And listening to him talk about that through that class was just very helpful. It gave me some new angles to think about it, new ways to be a little more honest with my writing. Right now, our listeners get an additional 15% off any annual membership at masterclass.com/excuses. That's 15% off at masterclass.com/excuses. And I'm going to say it one more time, masterclass.com/excuses.
Pre-roll, Gusto ad copy, take one. Speaking as a small business owner, I don't think anyone starts a business for the joy of calculating tax withholdings. That's where Gusto comes in, to take the stress out of payroll, benefits, and HR so you can focus on why you started your business in the first place. Gusto is online payroll and benefits software built for small businesses. It's all-in-one, remote-friendly, and incredibly easy to use, so you can pay, hire, onboard, and support your team from anywhere. Automatic payroll tax filings, simple direct deposits, health benefits, commuter benefits, workers' comp, 401k, you name it, Gusto makes it simple and has options for nearly every budget. Get direct access to certified HR experts. to help you through the toughest HR situations. Try Gusto today at gusto.com/WX and get 3 months free when you run your first payroll. That's 3 months of free payroll at gusto.com/WX.
This episode of Writing Excuses has been brought to you by our listeners, patrons, and friends. If you would like to learn how to support this podcast, visit www.patreon.com/writingexcuses. Season 20, Episode 45. This is Writing Excuses. Now go write. Break all the rules, Part 1. I'm Mary Robinette.
I'm Dongwon.
And I'm Erin, and I am excited to be talking about one of the sections that I am writing in the Now Go Write craft book, which is Break All the Rules. So I am very excited about writing rules and not following them because I like to destroy things, I guess. And I don't know.
Oppositional, even to yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Like, why? And so what I started doing when I was writing this section is I kept coming up with like different rules and how to break them. And they each like kind of spun off into their own little mini essay. And so what I thought I would do for this episode is I have 4 of them that I want to talk about. And I want to just sort of throw them out and say, like, what do you all think about this particular rule, when it should be broken? And I'm going to have Mary Robinette roll a virtual die to decide which one we talk about first.
We're starting with number 4.
We're starting with number 4, which is passive voice. So the rule here is do not use passive voice. Can one of you explain what that is in case somebody missed it in all their writing classes?
So if you can say, it's basically, she will be chased by zombies, is different than zombies chased her. And zombies chased her is active. She will be, or she is chased by zombies, is passive. And it's supposed to be a distancing thing, that you can pick a more active verb, that you can make it more immediate.
Yeah, I often see this as like, don't ever use is. Like, if is exists in your story, beat it to death with the adverbs that you also should be taking out of the story, which we will not be talking about today. But I really think that passive voice can be very, very useful. And a couple of ways that I think of that you can use passive voice to good intent. I'll tell you, tell me what you think, and if you have other ones. So one is by depersonalizing actions on purpose. So like, she is chased by zombies is a couple things. Like, maybe the point is not who's doing the chasing, but that she is being chased. In the way that police actions are often reported in the news, where it's like the person like was, killed by the cops versus the cops killed this person, shows the attitude of what is important in this case.
The suspect was struck by 17 bullets.
Exactly. Yeah, where it's like, who even shot the bullets?
Yeah.
Who knows? They were just struck by those bullets. The important thing is that they were stopped. And here's how, not who did the stopping. Yeah. It shows where the focus of the story is. And if you're trying to show, hey, in this particular story, the focus is on the 17 bullets and the person being ended, not like who is doing it, then that's a way to use passive voice. I would say another one is if the who is doing it is a surprise. So I was bitten by a zombie is different than a zombie bit me. If you don't know a zombie exists in the story, I was bitten by like gives you a chance to ramp up into the reveal of the sentence, which is the noun. Like it is like the, oh, you weren't bitten by your dog. You were bitten by a zombie. Holy crap. And so that's another reason to use passive voice. Yeah.
I mean, I think active voice in general, or like the activity level of the voice, is a dial, right?
Yeah.
And you can be Spinal Tap and say this always has to be at 11, or you can crank it down sometimes. And like you can deliberately slow things down. You can deliberately add a little padding in there. And sometimes those extra words will slow your reader's pace down when you want them to slow down a little bit and be a little bit more abstract, and then ramp it up again later as things pick up for whatever reason, right? And so I think being able to use the passive voice is just another tool in your kit, right? You know, not to be too on the point, but tools, not rules. This is a tool that you can use. Do people overuse it when they're first learning to write? Probably, but
But it's also a tool, like you can also use it to do some really creepy ass things. Like if you want your character to be a prisoner in their own body. So, the door was opened by her own hand.
Ooh.
Yeah. But she has no control over that. That can be like, ugh.
Yeah. And I think also to like super agree about the dial. It's like if you ever go out, not to use karaoke for everything, and hear somebody who is like a great belter, they have a very strong voice.
Yeah.
But if they just belt the entire song at the exact same level, at a certain point, you will tune it out. Like you're just like, at first you'll be like, oh, exciting that you can do that. And then you'll be like, oh my gosh, like again. And so I think that sometimes you see people use so much activity that it just becomes like, Jane ran up the hill, like Jane grabbed the bucket, like, and everything becomes kind of samey. And I think another thing that passive voice can do is to provide like a frame or a bed for the activity that is happening, the thing around it that makes the more active voice sentence stand out because it is the one that is doing it differently. It is belting out of a slow, calmer verse that brings all this attention to why have you become loud at this moment.
It can give us what you think of in film as an establishing shot, you know what I mean? Like a broader framework of the action, and then we zoom into the more active thing that's happening. She was chased by a horde of zombies. She reaches for the gun. You know what I mean? And the difference between those two things lets us zoom out and zoom in a way that I think is really, really useful. And it's just a great tool in your kit.
Yeah.
Exactly. The last thing I'll say about this one, sorry, didn't mean to, is to like, I think things like weather, time, setting. I mean, yes, the sun can beat down upon you and like the wind can beat you down or buffet you, but like sometimes like the setting is just existing. It's not actively opposing you. It is merely the thing that you are moving through. And it is nice to just kind of give it a bit more of it is passively there and doing things, and you are doing things in the setting as opposed to the setting is doing things to you.
Sometimes the wind was blowing through the trees is a better sentence than the wind blew through the trees, right? Sometimes you want that extra little bit of softness there.
Yeah, and the feeling of ongoingness. Like the wind was blowing through the trees sounds like something that's happening over time, whereas the wind blew through the trees seems like it just started, and it is a new action that you have to pay attention to right in this moment.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Another number.
2.
This is very similar in some ways. The inactive protagonist. Does your protagonist have to have agency or do anything at all? That's the question. Does your protagonist have to have agency or do anything at all?
So I have been thinking about this a lot, and I don't think that your protagonist does have to have agency or do anything at all. But I do think that it's going to be a more interesting story if they have an interior life and are, to some degree, aware of their lack of agency.
Yeah, I think that they have to do something, but the something can be internal, not externally focused. So a protagonist who survives. If you think about it, a lot of horror movies are about survival. Sometimes that survival is active, like I grabbed the knife and threw it at the zombie horde. But sometimes it's just like, I waited, I listened, like, which are actions, but they're very they're not actions of agency. They're actions of reaction. I'm trying to figure out what the threat is and how to deal with it.
I mean, ironically, we see this a lot in video games, actually, of a protagonist who's very passive and very reactive to the situation around them. And then the active choices are being made by the side characters, the companion characters, NPCs, things like that, in part because they don't want to put too much on the perspective of the player. And so it's sort of why we often see fan art or fan stories about side characters more than the main character. You think about like Mass Effect or Dragon Age fandoms, those are all obsessed with those side characters and less interested in the main characters. The main character is just reacting to whatever's going on. And, we see this a lot in anything that has an audience surrogate kind of character. A lot of weirdly superhero movies fall into this model too, where a lot of times the main character is kind of inactive for a lot of it and is responding to the things happening around them as the world gets crazier and crazier. But the big choices are being made by the villain. The big choices are being made by companions with them.
Yeah, and that can create such an exciting feeling of tension because often in our own lives, we don't have as much agency as we wish we did over the broader events happening around us. And so we can really identify. I think that's why it works for an audience surrogate.
Yeah.
If the character has really strong agency, we maybe don't feel as much like we identify with that character, more as we enjoy them, but we don't feel like that could be me, because if, aliens were attacking my town, I also would be hiding out in a closet and not necessarily like fighting them, tooth and nail, scrapping right there.
Yeah, it is one of those things where, like, I just finished a short story where the main character was a literal inanimate object.
Ooh.
And so there is no action that the character can take because it does not have movement. But it has all of this tension because it can't react. So like aliens coming in and you need to hide, you're not going to go out and fight the aliens. Yeah, that's going to be a really tense thing because at any moment they could come and you still have no agency there because they're aliens from another world.
Yeah. I would argue that the picaresque is an entire genre based on having a very inactive protagonist.
Yeah.
I mean, they're active in that they go from point A to point B, but they're not the ones who are inspiring the events when they arrive at that place. They're observing it and reacting to it. So something like Confederacy of Dunces or something like that he's not actively making any real choices in his life. I mean, Ulysses, kind of the same, Joyce's Ulysses, kind of the same thing kind of arguably the original Ulysses too. Anyways, but mostly these characters are just wandering around and stuff is happening around them and they're observing it without really having a lot of influence on the outcome. And I mean, these are some brilliant works of literature. They're very specific. They may not be for everyone, but there's absolutely space for a story in which your protagonist is kind of in the pocket.
Yeah, but I think what Aaron said about that they are still doing something, even if it's only an interior do.
Yes.
And that's evaluating or reacting or having an emotion.
Exactly.
And often, like you said, with video games, like side characters will fill that role. Like, so, because something is changing usually in a story. So who is changing it? Either it is something that naturally changes, like the seasons. It is something that a character is changing, but it doesn't necessarily have to be your character. So a thing I would say is if you want to have a more inactive protagonist, figure out where is the activity, where is the change coming from? Is it the world? Is it the other characters in the world? And then how is your protagonist either a reflection, a survival of, a reaction to those active changes? And now it is time for us to take an action, and that is to go to break.
For more than a decade, we've hosted Writing Excuses at Sea, an annual workshop and retreat on a cruise ship. You're invited to our final cruise in 2026. It's a chance to learn, connect, and grow, all while sailing along the stunning Alaskan and Canadian coast. Join us, the hosts of Writing Excuses, and spend dedicated time leveling up your writing craft. Attend classes, join small group breakout sessions, learn from instructors one-on-one at office hours, and meet with other writers from around the world. During the week-long retreat, we'll also dock at 3 Alaskan ports, Juneau, Sitka, and Skagway, as well as Victoria, British Columbia. Use this time to write on the ship or choose excursions that allow you to get up close and personal with glaciers, go whale watching, and learn more about the rich history of the region, and more. Next year will be our grand finale after over 10 years of successful retreats at sea. Whether you're a longtime alumni or a newcomer, we would love to see you on board. Early bird pricing is currently available, and we also offer scholarships. You can learn more at writingexcuses.com/retreats.
So when Aaron says take a break, what we actually mean is it's time for homework. When we originally recorded this, it was going to be 1 episode, but we've decided to split it into 2. So your homework for this episode is to write down some of the rules you think you follow most rigidly in your own writing. Like, are you a big fan of show don't tell? Do you think that you should cut all words that end with li? But take one of these rules and begin to think about ways you can challenge the rule. You can break it. You can soften it in some way. What happens if you invert it? So that's your homework. You're out of excuses. Now go write. Writing Excuses has been brought to you by our listeners, patrons, and friends.
Your hosts for this episode were Mary Robinette Kowal, Danwon Song, and Aaron Roberts.
This episode was engineered by Marshall Carr Jr., mastered by Alex Jackson and produced by Emma Reynolds. For more information, visit writingexcuses.com.